Hello, everybody. Adam Clery, ACFC here for you. Big news. We're going to get some of these made up. And even bigger news, Manchester City, they're back. It looked like they were on for an all-time stinker of a season, but after this last-second winner against Aston Villa, they're now third, which is probably where they're going to finish, and that's absolutely fine. So the question is, how then did Pep Guardiola turn a crisis into an opportunity? Or as the Chinese would say, a crisis-tunity. That was awful. I'm really sorry. Okay, so I'm going to start with two graphs here that will make limited sense at this stage, but just they're important for later, so bear with me now, right? This is Manchester City's entire defensive output from the 2-1 defeat away to Brighton earlier in the season. Now, ignore the fact the numbers are the wrong way around. It's an opta graph, so it's reversed when it's home or away, so I've had to flip it around so it makes sense. Just forget that for a second, right? This is every tackle, interception, ball recovery, clearance, everything they did defensively in that game. Now, they looked absolutely awful in this match, and they won something like 38 or 40% of all their tackles. This is not good. But this are those exact same stats, those exact same contributions, the tackles, interceptions, clearances, recoveries, everything from last night, depending on when you're watching this, against Aston Villa, a game in which they won 73% of their tackles. This is very good. Like, even if you just compare the center of the pitch in these two graphs, you can see they're competing far better. They're not getting bullied. So the question in this video is how and why did Pep Guardiola turn this, which is meek and cowardly and anemic, into this, which is burly and aggressive and what are you looking at, pal, etc. Well, their problems were both structural and physical, right? So to show you the structural side, i.e. the tactics, the shape, the formation, what they're supposed to be doing, let's go back to that Brighton game in November and I'll ask you this question, right? What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong is that Man City have committed all 10 outfield players to defending an area occupied by only 4 members of the opposition. They're not deep, which means they've left this space in behind to attack. They're really narrow, so both the flanks have players totally free to receive a pass, and there is zero pressure on the man in possession. This is about as bad a setup as you can see in the Premier League. Like, if you want to sit off here, you need to be on the edge of the box here. And if you want to be pushed up like this, then you have to press the ball. And yet somehow none of this is happening. And worst of all, right, Guardiola is just stood there looking at it. Like, he's got a great view of all of this, but he's just completely unable to fix it with the tools he had at his disposal. One pass later, it's into the wide area because that's totally free, and Brighton get a runner into the space behind because that's totally free, and in the ensuing scramble, 4 or 5 separate players get physically bullied into conceding this goal. Minutes later, they do the exact same thing. They defend in this weird compact block of corned beef, not pressing the ball, which one pass later turns into this. Like, dear God, just take your pick of how you want to concede the goal here. Like a run straight through the middle, one of these two getting into the gaping chasms on the outside. Obviously, they lose this game. But the thing is, as well as all these structural problems, they also had fairly major physical problems as well. Like, the Premier League has massively ramped up its own intensity in recent years, and Villa, Bournemouth, Fulham, Newcastle, Brentford, all sides currently enjoying very good seasons, and all sides that have massively ramped up how hard they work on and off the ball. Now, of course, how you get a team that is really good both on and off the ball is incredibly nuanced and complicated and clever, but it does, to a degree, also just boil down to running. How hard can you run, and how much can you do that running when it is hard? And Tottenham, for all their season has sucked, were 4 months ago doing loads of running. And City could not live with that at all. In almost every single goal they score, you see some City player just impotently pointing at a man who has left him in the dust in the hope that someone else will magically get there. And not to do a cheap plug here, but I did make this exact point in an article I did on my Substack at the time, right? When you're playing football, even you at 5-a-side, when lads just start blowing out their arse and pointing at somebody without saying everybody, that absolutely boils your piss, right? And here is Ilkay Gundogan doing it 3 or 4 separate times in the Premier League. Like this goal where they're robbed in the final third, lose 3 or 4 consecutive 50-50s. Gundogan again does the please help me point before everyone somehow makes the wrong decision and leaves this much space for Porro to score from. That might be the single worst goal I've ever seen Man City concede. And this game had to be an enormous wake-up call to Pep, because watching it, you lost count of how many times a Spurs player was just able to run past a Man City player, either with the ball or without, entirely unchallenged and entirely it's the word I want, kept up with, tracked, you know. And just don't get me wrong here, right? I'm not trying to rewrite history. They were still Manchester City. They made loads of chances in this match. It was insane that they somehow lost 4-0. But what must surely have occurred to Guardiola watching it was like, okay, that shouldn't have happened, but it can. And everyone just got wise to it, and they had a run of 1 league win in 9 as Brighton, Bournemouth, Liverpool, Villa, all the big running teams, remember, just blew them away. And they even, and dear God, this feels like a long time ago, got mullered by Ruben Amorim Sporting, who are fantastic at running, and then also lost to his Man United side, who are not. But yet, where did the goals in this game come from? A mad pounces on a loose back pass, so running, and everyone sits off Martinez while they defend in a weirdly corned beefy high block. So exactly the same as this goal, and exactly the same as this goal. So in January, that became his job, right? You have to go out and you have to fix this. And he did this by basically spending money. Omar Mamouche felt like the most un-City player you'd seen them buy in years. The way he drops off, he finds a space, he spins in behind. So he's really good at stretching teams. And then Nico Gonzalez, who's about as all-action a midfielder as Pep's ever likely to buy. He makes them way more high energy off the ball, and they're much better as a result at defending counter-attacks. But arguably, more important than those 2 signings though, and I think Guardiola deserves a lot of credit for this, is he actually turned around and had a look at what was sitting on the bench. Nico O'Reilly and James McAtee had a combined 2 minutes in the Premier League before the turn of the year, but both have now been involved in the majority of matches since. Now don't get me wrong, neither of them are the finished article by any stretch of the imagination yet, but crucially, what do? They work really hard off the ball and they really try and get at teams with their movement on it. So again, you're adding more energy, you're adding more running. Like here's a graph Opta put out a couple of weeks ago that shows you the age versus minutes for this squad. So much of the time on the pitch in the early part of the season was being given to players beyond their physical peak, and all of the new arrivals you can see here are far, far younger. Like, it shouldn't be that simple. And obviously it isn't, but also kind of is. But yes, obviously, as well as just adding more players who can run, Guardiola also changed the shape of the team, and that fixed the problems they were having structurally. Why does that sound wrong? Over the last couple of seasons, whatever formation Man City was starting with, the objective was to get 5 into the attacking line, with one of the defenders then coming in to make sort of a 2 behind them. So you kind of had this sort of shape. Sometimes they'd go absolutely mad, they'd get a 3rd player in this line, then go a 2-3-5 instead of a 3-2-5, but the objective was always an attacking line of 5 players. And thus, what has become sort of the accepted counter to playing against this is to sit really deep, deny them space in behind, and when you do turn the ball over, you've got all this space out wide on the flanks to try and get round the sides of them. And the change that Guardiola has made to this season has actually been really effective and quite clever. So instead of trying to invert one of the defenders into the centre of midfield, both the fullbacks, which is why Nico O'Reilly comes in really well, and Mateus Nunes, they're both naturally midfielders, they just push up into a 4. And instead of a 5 in the front line, you again have a 4, but you sit them considerably deeper. And the consequences of this are twofold. First of all, it means you've got actually for once space in behind to potentially run. And when you've got Mamouche in the front line, when you've got other players like that, that's nice and exploitable. It also means, because all you're doing is pushing your fullbacks into another line, that you're actually much better now at defending counter-attacks, because you can easily get into that space without getting too stretched across the line. And if you're sat there thinking, yeah, but surely you're sacrificing a player in the attacking line, so you're going to be less good at attacking. They're very dynamic with it. Again, the benefits of O'Reilly and the benefits of Núñez are when the play shuffles over to one side and they drag the back four across, you leave space for one of them to then make it a 5. So you can still get into that 2-3-5 as and when you need to, but defaultly, you're in a more stable formation, and also the quality you've got in this front line kind of means it's not that big a deal. And even their line of midfielders will sit a little bit deeper than you'll expect them to, creating this gap between them and the forwards with the intention of baiting out the opposition midfield, can't get him away, to leave the gap for the players to drop into. So it's weirdly like more conservative on the face of it, but it gives them more sort of explosive opportunities to get in behind or to play into space. And defenders haven't known what to do with this at all this season, by the way, because you've got a front line full of players who are comfortable dropping off into the space that they can find here, or also turning and running in behind. So they've been pulling this back four, or back fives as it's been, all over the place doing it. Marmoush is perfect for this. Like, this was something that just jumped straight off the screen to me when I was watching them play Crystal Palace. Like, how many times in the last couple of years have you seen a City player do what McAtee is doing here, which is pointing to receive the ball in behind? Never normally happens because that space is never normally there, but it is in this game because they've done this, and he gets around the back and he puts the ball in the ensuing chaos, they get a goal. And admittedly, yes, it is a little bit weird to be trying to explain this after the Aston Villa game, because Aston Villa are probably the team in the Premier League against whom this would work the least, because they are not interested in getting baited out. Their midfield will not attempt to press you there. They will sit as deep as they like. And you saw loads of times in this game them just spectacularly failing to create that space in behind, and as a result, they kept adding a fifth body in there, so it looked like the old Man City. But you can just... There were a few moments where you could see the vision. Like, this is from those first couple of seconds when Rashford should probably score. When the header is made forward by Diaz, everybody sort of reacts and tries to get into their attacking shape. And just, there it is. Those four go forwards and everybody else does all of this. So it was there. It was just much harder to see. And in fact, in the end, both of their goals did come from getting in behind, but not where there was any actual space, from individual determination to do that from first Marmoush and then later Doku. Not Kevin De Bruyne, not Ilkay Gundogan, not David Silva, who I did think was absolutely amazing in that game. From Marmoush and Doku, runners, players who will run. It should not be that simple, but also it is. And actually, I'll tell you one thing you did see in that Aston Villa game, despite the whole system not working: the determination to run back off the ball. Like, even the penalty, which was a bit weird, you will notice that when the ball is turned over, Núñez is this far away from the Villa player. And when, yes, Diaz does make the foul, he has made up all this distance. That is grafting. Second half, Watkins comes on. Villa get another really dangerous turnover. Look at the gaps and the distances that are in this moment, and yet, when they get to the edge of the box, all of these players have made their way back in, and Núñez, again, highlighting him for a reason, has closed that gap. So yes, that is why you turn this team here, who are getting outfought and outrun by every single team they play, into this team here, who, even when the system isn't working, will still graft and run sufficiently to get you a result, which is a very un-Manchester City style of play over the last couple of years, and yet, with the signings they've made and the young players they've brought through, feels very natural for this group of players. Bravo, Pep Guardiola. I'm sure he doesn't need to come on the internet and watch somebody on YouTube say he's doing a good job. I presume he's comfortable enough in himself for that, but regardless, here are my applauses. So yes, there you go, end of the video. Just before you go, really quickly, a reminder, I'm doing the Hackney Half for Calm, the campaign against living miserably. I'll stick the description in the video. They're a suicide prevention charity in the UK, which we need here because mental health services just do not get the funding they need. So I'm running 22.5 kilometers, which is a lot for me because I don't really do a lot of running. And if you'd like to sponsor, you'd like to make a donation towards that, you can. The link is there. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. You get me on all social medias at Adam Clery, Clery. Please subscribe to us here on ACFC, because we might hit 100,000 subs before the end of the season, which would be insane. So if you haven't done that yet already, you can click the thing and you can do that now. But until next time, this is Manchester City. This is the new Manchester City. New moon. I should have thought of that before I came on. Bye. Goodbye. Goodbye. Mwah. Goodbye.